This is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Brian and Mr. Betcher.
And a cat.
In
the background.
Well, it's my cat in the background, but she's always riding shotgun with me. But Mr. Betcher, listen to you last night speaking at the ISSA Rainier up here about tracking malware. That was awesome, dude. I saw that on YouTube.
Well, thanks, man. Had fun. It was great.
So that'll be available to people to listen. We'll have a link in the show notes to that if you want to watch that. Yes, it was well regarded. A lot of people enjoyed that, so that was excellent.
Good. I hope people can take what they learned there and apply it to their jobs, right, and to their own systems. I mean, when you talk about the software restriction policies and the the malware that I had explained, I did Dridex, some ransomware, Covter, and a malicious Word doc. Just, all of them used local security, the app data local directory, and software restriction policies on that directory would have just stopped them in their tracks.
Right on. Yeah. You'll also be doing your LogMD thing at Black Hat Arsenal, which is pretty cool. So
I hope we get accepted to that. We'll know shortly.
Oh, that's right. There's still a window for acceptance on that, but yep. All right. Well, good luck on that. Speaking of malware, we did a podcast I'd say probably about a month and a half ago about how malware works and exploit kits. And Mr. Betcher at the end of that said, "Hey, I know a guy. We should probably get him on. He does a little bit about this. He spoke. I believe he spoke at B-Sides Austin. I could be wrong.
Yep.
He did. Okay, cool." So we finally got him. We tracked him down. We manhandled him, stuck him in our green room. Yep, he's in our green room right now. We'd like to welcome Earl Carter to the show. Earl, thank you for joining Breaking Down Security this week.
Well, thanks for having me.
Right on. So most InfoSec professionals have a history, whether it be good or bad. We'd like to hear about a little where you came from, and how you got to be where you are today.
How I came from where I got today. Well, I'm like a guy who's been doing this for like ever. I've been doing network security for almost 20 years now. I actually started way back when protecting Air Force networks, and then sort of stumbled on to working in my current job. And I get to now hunt for things like malware on a daily basis. So it's not like my nighttime job. I get to do it all the time. So that's one of the cool things about my job. So
that must be quite daunting to be the guy hunting for bad things. I'm sure you have your fingers in many IRC channels and many pies and of that kind.
Yeah, and have lots of coworkers always helping because, like you said, it's a never-ending task.
Sure.
What do you mean by helping? You mean clicking attachments? That kind of helping?
No, that's what workers do, but these guys are actually helping to hunt for stuff. So yeah, I guess both kinds of help there.
Right on. So your talk at B-Sides Austin, I believe, was on one specific malware called Angler, in this case, the exploitation. I'm sorry, I'm doing it again. I did it on the malware podcast with the exploit kits. I'm mixing the terms. Angler is an exploit kit that sends out malware, right? So maybe you could help fix me by explaining what Angler is.
Explaining what Angler is? Well, basically, to start off with, Angler is an exploit kit. And obviously, exploit kit, you hear about it in the news constantly. There's various flavors of exploit kits. You had the original black hole exploit kit. What it does is it allows someone to basically put together various exploits and then be able to launch that at somebody's browser or their browser plugins and be able to take advantage of that system and drop various payloads on it. And Angler specifically is sort of what we call the de facto high-end exploit kit that's out there. Ever since Black Hole went away, Angler's been the one that sort of took the lead and became the most prolific. It adds the most features. It's constantly updating what it does to avoid detection. So it's sort of like the high-end exploit kit. It's the one that's trying to lead the pack. It's always adding new features that other exploit kits will quickly incorporate because, again, everybody's trying to compete for business, so they're all adding these features as quick as they see them.
So when you said black hole gone away or it became less popular, how does something like that happen? Is it because the command and control gets compromised, or I know Microsoft does a pretty decent job of trying to round up bad domains or whatever. Is it something that's constantly ebbing and flowing where they become popular and then they don't become popular? Is it a cyclical thing?
It's more like, well, that one, the case, it was taken down. Law enforcement gets involved. Like I said, if the command and control gets exposed enough and law enforcement can find who's behind it, they can actually take it down. But recently, people learn from their mistakes and they see things that, same thing with CryptoLocker and ransomware. Their command and control was obvious. They were able to track it down to the people. So they took them out, arrested them basically. So what happens is the bad guys learn. So they're now much more cautious about it. So now we have a lot of ones, and I'm not sure if it's ebbing and flowing. They're constantly trying to, almost it looks like, gain market share. They're trying to get business because it's become big business. They're making lots of money at this, and that's why those exploit kits are so effective. I mean, they're dropping things like ransomware, which we've seen earns millions of dollars for these guys in a year. So everybody wants a piece of that pie. So you have these various exploit kits that are out there. It just, some have, I think, a lot more resources than others.
Do you ever? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Betcher.
Can you walk us through how Angler technically works? Like how do you? I know it's got like a GUI or whatever for the attackers. How do they deploy it?
Well, the deployment side, I mean, it's hard to explain the details on that. The big thing is that they find a way to target the users. And the easiest way that they do it in most cases is through malvertising, where they basically set up malicious ads that are on various sites. And they can inject those ads into the ad network in many different ways. But the whole key is that when a user browses to a specific site, they're going to get redirected through this redirection chain and eventually end up on the landing page that they placed there for that exploit kit. Now, these exploit kit writers are actually, again, when we talked about trying to stay anonymous and stay hidden, they how would you put it? They highly guard that exploit landing page. So actually, when they're first trying to redirect you, they're doing lots of checks on your system to see if you're vulnerable or not. And in most cases, if you're not vulnerable to these, they won't even try and download their exploits onto your system because they know they have no chance of succeeding. And all they're going to do is get attention to themselves. So they really try and protect that exploit landing page before they're going to try and load it onto somebody's system to try and compromise it. But basically, they'll place those exploits there, wait for someone to hit that malicious ad, get redirected to that landing page, and then it will drop that exploit package onto the system. It takes advantage of whatever vulnerability they're trying to exploit, and then it drops whatever payload they're trying for that day, whether it's ransomware, whether it's click fraud, whether it's keyloggers, pretty much whatever they're trying to push for that time. And recently it's been increasingly more just ransomware. It's probably at least 60% of the time it's always ransomware. That's the attack of the day. It seems like everybody likes to use that because it seems to be a good moneymaker.
And ransomware being like the Tesla variants, like Tesla Crypt and
Tesla
like Alpha
Crypto Wall.
Yeah.
All those flavors that keep popping up. And again, that's sort of just like in the exploit kit side. Everybody wants a piece of that pie, so everybody's creating their own ransomware variant. But there's those leaders of the pack that seem to be continually adding the new features. Like Crypto Wall seems to be the one that had the most new features, but that's the thing. Everybody keeps adding it in, and that's the effect of what they're doing once they gain access to the system, because the exploit only gets them onto the system, and then they have to have something that's running there. And ransomware seems to be one of those biggest ones that people want to run now because of the money that it can make.
Yeah, it's payout, immediate payout, as opposed
Yeah, immediate
to
payout with no overhead. If you think about it, if you're doing anything like a credit card, you actually have to go and find a way to spend the money. Whereas ransomware, they can go right to Bitcoin. They have anonymous currency. They immediately get their money, and they didn't really have a lot of overhead.
Yeah, unless you're one of those hospitals that never have, I read one of the stories about the hospitals that were hit by the crypto wall or whatever, and they were like, we didn't even know how to get Bitcoin to be able to send to people, It's kind of interesting now. They've made it super easy. You just click on a link inside of the warning window, and it takes you right somewhere where you can convert monies directly into the Bitcoins. I thought that was pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, they had to do that because they have to teach grandma lots of times how to do Bitcoin.
Right.
And they've succeeded. So
yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned grandma. We had one of the articles in the local paper up here in the Seattle area talked about a crypto locker hit like a small fire department for like $750, and it didn't make big news. And I think a lot of the ransomware is, you only hear about the ones where it's like $7 million worth of ransom to get back, but you don't hear about the ones where it's like grandma's needing $150 worth of Bitcoin. And again, these people who are putting out this ransomware, they don't know who they're hitting. It's just kind of spray and pray kind of, they don't know if they're hitting, DOD, or if they're hitting, grandma down the street, that kind of thing.
Right. Well, that's the key. They just know everybody has data.
Yep.
I mean, you mentioned like Tesla Crypt. That was one of the first ones that came out and actually targeted online gamer save files. So they know people that play online games would have this massive amount of effort put into their save game. If I encrypt that, they're going to pay me to get that back, assuming they didn't have a backup.
Exactly.
Yeah, a lot of time and investment in that saved game.
Yeah.
Got all your artifacts there collected in your pocket or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you said that they hit a site and it redirects them to the exploit kit or the command and control, whatever it is. And well, my question is, can cross-origin script blockers in your browser prevent Angler?
I don't think it. I mean, like, is that? I'm trying to think of cross origin. I mean, because the ad blockers are the closest thing you can get to try and block it, because it looks just like a regular ad. I mean, that's the whole point. Is it doesn't look any different than a regular ad, and ads are designed to pull you back to wherever the site was, and because of that, that's why it's very hard to distinguish the malicious from the non-malicious. I mean, that's what they're getting very clever about it. In fact, one of the new gates that we saw with Angler actually went through, and what it would do is it would display this flash ad, and again, maybe flash will die, and then a lot of this they'll have to find a new target vector. But in this case, the malicious ad would display this flash content which looked like an ad, and behind the scenes it's actually passively scanning the system to figure out what version of flash it has, what the browser was, whether it was vulnerable to those exploits that they had. And then if you were vulnerable at the end of this flash content, it would then redirect you through the chain to try and then drop the exploit onto your system and compromise you. But if you weren't vulnerable, all you saw was that flash content, and then it went on and it looked just like a normal ad.
Wow. What kind of other, flash, what are some of the vulnerabilities that have been around, like in the last 3-6 months, that you've seen Angler take advantage of?
Well, the biggest, again, is Flash. Sometimes they'll do Silverlight, which is, again, and the other opposite media player. But Flash seems to be the highest. And then every once in a while, they'll take advantage of like a specific IE vulnerability in the browser. But again, the majority of it seems to be really targeting Flash. They love to do Flash exploits.
And does it have to be, they're just known vulnerabilities, right? I mean, we're not talking like they found some O-Day or anything like that, right?
Well, sometimes they have O-Days. Like, beginning of last year, they were, exploiting an O-Day. But most of the time, the problem with it is a lot of people don't always patch immediately. And we've seen instances, pretty much they've got it down now to within the span of about 3 to 5 days after Adobe does an update for a specific 0-day, they're already exploiting it in the wild. So they don't take any time at all to reverse that update into a working exploit. And if you're not patched, they're going to take advantage of that. I mean, that's one of the reasons you're starting to see all these browsers. IE still hasn't quite got there yet, but Safari, Firefox, all of them now will not let you run Flash if it's outdated, because they know it's too prime of a target.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. You want, I mean, even with the updated version, if there's still Ode out there, patching it won't really make much of a difference.
So what are some features of Angler? Like, I guess the reason why it's top of the market right now as far as exploit kits is because it's got a lot of good stuff, or is it just because it works?
Well, they keep adding new stuff. I mean, I remember it talked about the different exploit kits always taking advantage. Well, like Angler was the first one to add domain shadowing, where everybody's mimicked that. They put in 302 cushioning. Other people have mimicked it. So they're constantly battling with each other, adding their features. They just seem to have the best development. I mean, they seem to be the quickest to take advantage of, creating an exploit for, say, a Flash update that came out. They're the quickest to jump on top of it. They just seem to have a very good infrastructure that really monitors the pulse of what they're doing. I mean, they can quickly see if what they're doing is effective. I mean, when we worked with Limestone and took down an Angler instance, and their backend infrastructure was well set up. I mean, they were constantly monitoring their proxy servers. If one of them was taken down, they would immediately set up another one. They got constant feedback from their exploit server to know whether they were effective or not. So it's just, I think, the robustness of what they put into it. They're constantly looking for new features. I mean, a good example is, I think it was in the middle of last year, maybe near the end of last year, Angler was the first to start taking advantage of Diffie-Hellman. I mean, everybody probably knows it's part of the TLS protocol. Well, in this case, they decided, hey, between my victim and my command and control, if I use Diffie-Hellman, I can get this shared secret, generate a new hash from my payload each time then, because I've encrypted it with this shared secret. So each time my payload comes down, even if it's the same payload, the hash is different because I'm encrypting it with a different key. So it's those new things. They're constantly tweaking their URLs to avoid detection. So it's one of those that they're just constantly evolving. If you put detection in place today, within the span of a month or so, at the least, they're going to have changed something. And if you don't change with it, your detection is going to start missing things.
Cool. So let me go back a little bit. At the beginning, you were mentioning that it was the first to use domain shadowing and 302 bumping?
Cushioning.
That's it. Could you explain what those are for people who don't understand like me?
Sure. Domain shadowing, I mean, I say they were the first exploit kit to use it. It was used infrequently many years. For probably like 2011 was, I think, the first instance we saw of it. But if you think about it, when I mentioned that they have all these redirections where they're trying to redirect you to their exploit page, their exploit landing page, when they do that redirection, obviously, say I compromise a WordPress site, that's going to work for a short period of time, but that site's going to quickly get a bad reputation because once I use it multiple times, people are going to say, hey, this site's got this link is bad, it's delivering bad content, so they'll get a bad reputation. It won't be useful anymore. Well, with domain shadowing, what they do is they compromise an existing registrant's account, and then unknown to the owner of that valid domain, they start generating multiple subdomains. And when they generate those subdomains, those are the ones that they're using to redirect people to their landing page so that they can constantly keep evolving those redirection URLs so that now they can stay ahead of that reputation. The same as they continually use different IP addresses, but they're constantly using those subdomains under a valid domain. Because again, they're trying to make it difficult on the blocking side, where if you think about it, in a lot of situations, I can block the entire domain because I know the domain is bad. Well, here, the domain itself is legitimate. It's all the subdomains underneath that are malicious. And that's where they can keep generating them pretty much as quick as they want, and they're all free because they've compromised accounts.
So I assume the subdomains are some kind of long hash dot legitdomain.com or legitdomain.org or something like that?
Various, yeah. They put various combinations, but it all amounts to that it's a legitimate domain with various subdomains tacked onto it. They can even look fairly legitimate. They just tack them all on because normally most registrants don't go back and look at their account. They may log in once a year to renew their registration, but they don't see all these subdomains that they're creating underneath that one valid domain, which is all they're concerned about.
And the DNS will point, you can use a different DNS to point to the subdomains that are naughty and not necessarily, google.com or, badguy.google.com could be to a different complete unknown DNS.
Yeah.
Okay.
Since you study
And then for like your, well, I was going to, he also mentioned 302 Cushing. I was going to explain that real quick.
Go to 302.
I mean, the
Yes,
main thing
please.
with that one is that on the internet, you constantly see people getting redirected. 302 is just a redirection. I went somewhere and they go, wait, that content's not here. Go somewhere else to get it. So you see it constantly in regular traffic, but exploit kit writers like to take advantage of that as well. So they make it look like you're going to one site, but then the 302 redirection actually points you to the real site that they wanted you to go to. And it's sort of like they're trying to make it difficult for people who are trying to see that someone went to that malicious site, because in their logs, they see them going to what looks like an innocuous site, but the 302 redirection actually takes them somewhere else. So they're using it to sort of do the redirection, and people see 302s all the time. It's common traffic, so they don't even think about it. And that's a way that they can get you to a more malicious site without it looking that way in the logs.
How do defenders capture that, right? Like if they have, a proxy or, I don't know, OpenDNS or something like that, how do you know that this is taking place, and can you alert on that?
That's more tricky because you have to actually start looking at it. You have to actually see the redirection and start following that redirection, as opposed to just looking at the surface. You actually have to follow where it redirected to.
So if you log everywhere that your employees go to, would that condition be contained in the log so that you could alert on it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're logging it, you would see that. It's part of the logs. It's just the key is that most people don't think about it. They see the 302 and then don't see to tie that connection now, because it redirected them automatically to a different location.
Okay.
So you were mentioning the domain shadowing. Is there a way to defend against that too? Is it just regularly logging in, or can, do most domain registrars send emails when you've added new domains? Can that be something that, you get more verbose emailing or alerts when somebody does anything on your account?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert on the domains, but I don't think they get that much visibility into it. I mean, some of the stuff you can look at on your own network side, if you're defending a network, is when you start seeing multiple of all these subdomains all pointing to like one same IP address, that's when you start noticing it, because they start using lots of different various shadow domains, and they're all pointing to the same IP address. And a lot of those aren't even all under the same one common domain to start with. So when you start seeing all those get pointing to that one IP address, that's one of the easier ways to detect that.
Yeah, but some of the hosting companies, the large hosting companies, you'll see a ton of people going to the same IP, or you'll see a website and that'll go to a particular IP address that a hosting company uses. So it's I'm sure it'd be really hard to tell the difference from a legit hosting company and one of these, this domain shadowing.
It can get tricky. I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, it's the same opposite side when you talk about IPs for, like you mentioned, hosting. Lots of times the IP points to an address or a server that's hosting, hundreds of different systems on it. So that's tricky as well, because you can't just blacklist that IP, because there's lots of legitimate stuff there. And that's the tricky part on here. Sometimes that's an indicator. Other times, it's never a blanket indicator anymore. That's the problem. Sometimes this will point out, when I see all these different domains pointing that one IP, that these domains are not the most legit in the world. Other times you have to see, now, is this meaning that they're all going to a common hosting provider? So you have to dig further. You can't just take that on face value to start with. And that's part of the problem, is a lot of these you have to keep digging 2 and 3 levels down. You can't just do the surface examination. You have to go farther to make sure that you're not get as many false positives.
Have you purchased Angler to study it?
Nope.
Why not?
Got too much other stuff to do. But no, I mean, it's like anything else. It keeps evolving. You'd end up just constantly spending money buying something to see how it works. Plus, it would help fund them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a company buying their what their competitor product is, just to see if they can compete against it, right, and learn about it. But it'd be interesting if somebody has purchased it, what what kind of features it gives. Have you ever compromised or been able to sort of hack back and look at what the GUI or command and control looks like and sort of use it?
No. The most we got is the closest we work with Limestone. We got data from them on how their backend was set up, but we never got access like to a system that you could see the GUI interface or see how it interacts.
Mm-hmm. I've seen, you can see pictures on Google, like some of these whackers will, post images of their stats, how well certain exploits work, as a percentage and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I've seen.
So I have a question. If you haven't bought the malware, if you haven't bought the exploit kit, how do you find out how these things work? I mean, what's the forensics involved with analyzing an exploit kit?
I mean, we're looking through lots of data is what we're doing. I mean, we have visibility into lots of telemetry data. So we're actually seeing things like, we'll see block data and we'll see what's getting blocked and then start tracking back to see what those systems were doing and sort of try and find those redirection URLs. So if we can get to one of those exploit landing pages. So we're constantly looking through massive amounts of telemetry data to try and see how these things are eventually trying to target the end system. And that's how we constantly see this. We're looking through those links, seeing how the links are changing, finding ways, because ultimately we're trying to develop detection where it works so we can protect our customer. When we do that, we're trying to set up those blocks in place. Like if they have a certain URL structure that they're using for their redirection links, then we're trying to write regexes or different ways to see those links and start blocking them.
How successful?
And that's what we start looking for. We find what that looks like. It's limited. It's like a short-lived. I mean, you'll find it and you'll work on it and then it'll last for maybe a few weeks and then they'll change their structure and you'll start noticing that you're no longer getting any hits on those and they're still active. So you start searching and go, oh, wait, they've changed it. They changed their keywords. Because they're constantly trying to look much more like regular traffic to make it harder to filter it out.
So there's no way to automate that detection.
Not really, because every time we find it, we create one, and then as soon as we put it in place, they're changing it. It never lasts more than about a month at most before they change something, add some new parameters to it, or something that's going to break your existing detection.
How do they tell that you've, sort of detected them?
I don't know if they're seeing us detect it or if, just like I said, when we found information on their backend infrastructure, they get feedback from their exploit server on, how effective they are. And I think they just have enough of a pulse on it that they sort of look at it and go, well, hey, if I'm working and I have this normal rate of infecting people and, say I'm doing ransomware, if I have a normal rate that I'm compromising, 100 systems a week, for example, it's probably much more, and I start noticing that declining, then I don't really know necessarily exactly how someone detected it, but they did. So let me change up what I'm doing. Maybe I'll change my URL structure. Maybe I'll add some new functionality. They just keep constantly playing with the mix to avoid detection. So I think it's more they sort of notice that they're either not making as much money, and then they just evolve to change what they're doing.
Now, is that the whackers or is it the exploit kit authors that notice this and change things?
I would assume it's like the exploit kit authors because they're the ones that are getting paid to drop all the payloads. And
really?
That's like anything else. If you don't have a good tool, then people are going to go to a different exploit kit to pay them to drop their payload.
So if someone purchases,
owns it,
So if someone purchases Angler and they're going to deploy it somewhere, it's the Angler creators that build something within the tool that allows the buyer to deploy Angler, and so they have to keep constantly changing it.
Or they just get the payload. I mean, the key is most of the other ones, they have a payload that they want deployed, and you can just pay someone to drop that for you with an exploit kit.
So the authors of Angler are actually the ones controlling Angler, and they're being paid per install.
Effectively, that's an easy way to look at it.
Wow.
I
Okay.
mean, I don't have the details, but that seems to be the way it works.
So I can't buy Angler. All I do is pay
You're renting
them
it.
to install my exploit kit. Not my
I think-
exploit kit, my malware.
I think renting it is a good example to put it. They want you to be able to use it to drop something, but that's the point. They're going to keep, and they, from what I've heard, since I haven't seen it in detail, but I mean, I think they even, it's like anything else. They may even have tiers of service, better exploit kits for more money type situation, but that's the whole point, is that there's a lot there. It's sort of mixing, one person knows how to exploit systems. Someone else has malicious payloads that they want to drop on a system, and they merge the two together.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I mean,
you keep those separate.
We're also seeing that with malvertising. I mean, some of the latest malvertising we saw seems to look like the people that are doing the malvertising actually did multiple exploit kits as part of the same malvertising campaign, almost as if they were doing the malvertising as a service, saying, we'll do malvertising for you for your exploit kit for some fee, and we'll take care of the whole malvertising piece. You just worry about your exploit kit.
Sounds very capitalist.
Well, like I said, it's become money. It's big business now. They're just cutting up the pieces and saying, okay, make it as efficient as possible.
So you're saying Angler is centralized. They don't sell their software to people, sell them a package. They're maintaining their own code. They're keeping it on their servers. They're centralizing it. They're taking care of it, and they just rent it out. They give you access or whatever.
Well, if you think about it, that's where we talk about them evolving the features so quickly. I mean, that's the point. They have to have a development effort behind that, and that's the thing. If you're doing it, you want the latest and greatest, then it'd be kind of hard to keep feeding that out, because you'd be worried about, in a lot of cases, someone just taking it and using it to themselves. If you have this great kit that can be used, what prevents someone from just using it whenever they want?
Yeah. So we've seen, you've got Angler, and Angler has different variants and stuff. How do people get different variants if the supposed lead developers do they actually distribute the source code? I mean, is this like an open source project?
For what do you mean different variants? What was that?
Well, I mean, for like the different variants of Angler exploit kit. I mean,
I think it's just like a different module that they'll use.
There's different payloads, and they just keep adding different exploits in to be effective at getting. If you think about it, at the end of the day, the exploit kit's only worried about being able to drop something on a system and run it. Mm-hmm. And that's what those exploits are, and it's the payloads that keep changing. It's like someone says, well, hey, I want you to drop ransomware today. Maybe yesterday they wanted you to drop bds. Maybe they want to drop a keylogger tomorrow. Mm-hmm. It depends on what they want to run on those systems.
Okay. So I was reading about from an SC Magazine article from March of last month, and you mentioned that bds as a firmware. They're saying that it looks like it goes pretty far down the rabbit hole here. One of these the Angler exploits drops a variant of this bds malware, which then drops a Trojan called Evotob. How deep down can this go? I mean, obviously you're dropping one type of malware to do one thing, and then you're dropping a secondary Trojan to do another thing on a box. Are people multitasking these boxes? One's mining Bitcoin at the same time it's serving up, ware sites or something.
I don't know about mining Bitcoin. That seems about dated now. It's kind of hard to do that. But I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. But that's the thing. A lot of these, the thing is, once you get your basic installer on the box, depending on what that installer is, some of the installers will just keep downloading other malware. I mean, that's one of the keys that comes into a problem. Like, say you do get ransomware in your box, maybe you pay the ransom and you decrypted your files. Mm-hmm. They still have that installer there that could then grab another piece of malware and put it on the box. And that's the whole point, is that once they get it, you can download multiple pieces of malware.
Okay, so that's what we call a dropper. So what you're saying is that Angler puts that dropper on the box, and then say a malware author or a malware user will pay Angler to drop their malware on 1,000 machines, right? So that malware can be dropped on 1,000 machines, and they could kind of overlap that too. Maybe, they have 1,000 machines at their disposal. They'll do 1,000, dry decks, and then they'll do 1,000 of a different kind of Trojan, and then they might do 1,000 ransomware and triple their profits, right?
Mm.
It's possible. I mean, we've seen instances, like you mentioned, BDEP. We've seen instances where BDEP would get dropped onto a box, and then shortly after that, it would then get hit again with Angler and drop ransomware.
Okay.
I mean, sort of like it didn't seem to care. Some instances it will hit it multiple times on the same box.
So you're saying Angler puts an executable, their own executable, on a victim, and then that executable will download whatever malware they want it to.
Well, I mean, again, it's back to that payload. If their payload is just ransomware, it may not have that extra functionality to download other payload. Basically, BDEP, that one was designed to grab, do click fraud and other things. But then, it just depends on the dropper that you're talking about. If my dropper is set up that way, then that's how, then I'll have that functionality. A lot of times now, I don't think they even worry about that because, again, it's that overhead. There are lots of times they're going for the quick bang. Here, if I drop the ransomware, I'm already going to hit the system. It's going to be very obvious when I encrypt all the files. And all I'm worried about is getting my money out of it. I don't really care about reinfecting it because, the assumption is you're going to just clean the system up after you've done that if you're smart. But you never know. I mean, that's the whole point, though, is there's always that piece. You never know what that dropper looks like. It may only do ransomware. It may have the ability to lay there and grab other stuff once you've cleaned off the ransomware.
Yeah, and having multiple malware on a box, I mean, to infect the box, a flash may have worked to do that, but it may be the only box with flash in that network. I'm not saying that that's probably true, but if they dropped a second one that would affected, say, Java, then you may not get very far infecting a bunch of machines with the flash bug, but with the flash bug and the Java bug together, the malware together, you would gain even more market share for the the bad guys.
Potential, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's again, it's hard to tell. They just, they keep doing different payloads constantly. And we see much more on the actual infection side of the house and not so much actually, as it's running, we'll analyze various pieces of malware on the systems, but it's much harder to get that data because that's normally much further on customer networks, which we don't always have that much access to see how it's working. That's more of like an incident response team gets to actually see how is it communicating because, pretty much your payload has the ability to do whatever you program it to do, and it just depends on how creative that person wants to be when they develop that payload.
Mm-hmm. So with regard to incidents of compromise or indicators of compromise, is it pretty much the same all the way around where everybody uses, IP addresses, domain names, hashes, everybody uploads those to VirusTotal, and then, the bad guys look at VirusTotal and realize they've been had and create different variants? I mean, is there a way that we can break the cycle of that where people aren't, using VirusTotal also as a, hey, we've been found out, let's move along? Is there a better way of doing that?
I don't know if VirusTotal is the bad guy on that one, just because the fact that they keep updating when they see, I mean, they know people look at hashes as it is now. Mm-hmm. So I think it's like anything else. If you don't have multiple layers of protection on your network, they already know that people are going to put, say, antivirus on their network.
Yeah.
So they're going to know that I'm going to have to bypass that step. So if you don't have, multiple ways to protect against this, they're going to get past a single layer of protection. So it's just you have to keep looking at multiple facets, and maybe you don't catch it when it first came in, but now you catch it before it can go to the command and control because you've got a reputation filter. Other times you may catch it when it comes in because the hash is known to be bad. It's sort of a combination of all those. It's getting difficult now to be able to use one factor to protect the network because they're just getting that creative at trying to avoid detection.
Okay.
And I think if you suspect that this is a targeted attack, what you would do to not let them know that you found them out is just to take a hash of the executable and put the hash into VirusTotal, and if VirusTotal doesn't know about it yet, then you got something that's unique or at least brand new, and you don't want them to know that so don't upload the payload, just upload the hash. That way they can't tell.
Or just check the hash. I mean, that's a common one. You can check the hash. I mean, a lot of people, if you're paranoid about not giving stuff off your network, executables or whatever it was on your network, you don't know if you're leaking information. But if you just check the hash, you can, like you said, see if it's there, and you'll know whether it's there or not. You don't always have to submit everything. You can check to see if it's already been submitted by other people. Because again, a target attack, you have to take a totally different approach to checking your network as well. Because if someone specifically targets you, you need to look a lot more closely at your systems than if you just happen to be collateral damage. Right.
So what we typically do is we capture the payload, and then we're able to take a hash of that and see if VirusTotal knows about this. Is this a known executable? If not, then we might have some super secret sauce here. We don't want to make the attackers wise to that. So if they knew that we have we captured their executable, all they have to do is check VirusTotal for their executable. Then they'll just create a new one and try again.
Right. Well, I mean, the same thing applies to like domain generation algorithms. A lot of these tools to connect to their command and control, they'll have an algorithm that generates the domains they're going to connect to. Yep. Well, if you can reverse engineer that and figure out what that algorithm is, you can then block those domains as they come up. But obviously, you wouldn't want to go out like in a blog post and say, well, we reverse engineered this and figured out their domain generation algorithm, because then they're going to change it. So, that's the thing. Lots of times you have to decide what you're going to release information-wise, because it is an arms race. If you show that you've detected something, they're going to basically pivot what they're doing and change. So you have to work with that and not always release everything that you're doing, because otherwise they're going to just find a way around that.
And I'm assuming that Angler and other exploit kits use. You mentioned they use DNS services. They must use obviously not legit DNS services. They use dynamic services for that kind of thing because it's easy to get rid of quickly.
You mean like dynamic DNS? I mean, they it's like anything else. They can use dynamic DNS. They've used that before to continually change their domain. That's sort of what you can do with domain shadowing as well. You're changing the domain because you have so many to choose from. Mm-hmm. But again, a lot of those, like for the ones that's domain shadowing, I don't even have to use a sketchy domain for DNS because it's already part of the register. If I compromise a GoDaddy registering account, GoDaddy will resolve those subdomains. Okay. I just have to put what IPs they're pointing to. So in that case, they don't even have to have a sketchy DNS server because there's already one provided by the registrant.
Very nice.
How do you defend against Angler?
Constant vigilance.
That's it. I mean, there's not a super secret, sauce to or an awesome technique to get about 95% of it. I mean, what's the deal?
I can tell you, we're constantly hunting it, and they're constantly changing. That's the thing. It's just constantly evolving your detection. I mean, because that's the point.
The best thing you can do is, well, you said constantly evolving your detection. So they have to exploit your system somehow. That's number one. They have to find an exploit, right? Can they social engineer?
I mean, obviously, patching is the first thing. If your systems are up to date all the way and all the patches constantly, you're making it harder because they don't have something to take advantage of. But then the opposite side of that is you still have users. And users like to click on things and open attachments. So, it's a battle there. But if you have everything up to date, running the latest systems, obviously that's going to be your first plus, because obviously it's easier to exploit an older system, say a Windows 7, they patch that regularly as well, compared to the latest and greatest. It's like anything else. You want to have the most up-to-date patches to start the protection, and then you just want to also be constantly vigilant on your network. I mean, a lot of times you may not know exactly, say, like a reputation system of what's the command and control, but lots of times it may just be the location of where they're going. I mean, if you're working in your network, maybe a specific country you don't need to go to. When I start seeing traffic go out to this other foreign country that I don't normally do business with, maybe I should scrutinize that traffic and see what's happening.
Mm-hmm. So obviously you guys have certain sources where you get information from. I was hoping you might, give us a good, good site that you go to for looking at those things. You probably can't do that. It's probably trade secret, but.
Well, see, that's it. We don't have sites. We just have data. I mean, that's the point. Customers share data with us. So we actually have visibility into customer data for lots of customers. And then visibility of that data lets us see what's happening on real networks.
Okay. Do you share that data?
No, because it's customer data.
Yeah, you're going to get in trouble sharing out customers' data if you don't de-anonymize it or, even have contractual obligations for that. No, I thought it would be like more glamorous, like, Brian Krebs learning Russian so that he can go on Carter sites or something. I didn't know if you guys followed the underscene in that manner. So,
I mean, we try and keep our pulse on everything that's going on, through as many sources as you can. But again, one of the biggest sources we have is live data that's going to give us information of what's really happening.
Mm-hmm. At the beginning of the show, you mentioned law enforcement taking down domains and stuff. Have you ever been involved with anything like that where, you've, had all the information, you contact, I don't know, the FBI or somebody and go, hey, here's the packet, here's where everything is, it's where it's located, you should go get them. And they're like, oh, come and help us. And, it's all, James Bondy and stuff. Do you ever have to deal with anything like that?
Not really. Most of the time we have information and we'll just pass it on and say, here's the information we had on this campaign. And if they can do something with it, they will. But normally it's sort of, you pass it to them and then they have to go through all the legalese side of the house. That's way beyond us because it's so difficult nowadays with all the things like Bitcoin and Tor being used. It's hard to track it down to a real person.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we're worried about protecting our customers, so we want the protection in place. But if someone can track it down to the real person, that gets way beyond what we're concerned with because it's really difficult now.
Sure.
Okay. You mentioned people clicking attachments. You don't need Angler for that. Angler's more attacking the browser, right?
Well, it normally would be that case, but just like about a month ago, they decided that wasn't enough. They actually started they had a phishing campaign where they started impersonating like 900 companies saying, here's your order. And inside the email, there was a link where you would click on that link and that would actually do the redirection for you now. So instead of using malvertising, they were using phishing now.
Well, that makes sense.
Right. But it still attacks the browser, right? Because when you click the link, the browser opens. They're still attacking the browser. Now,
right, but they were still... Well, in that case, though, they're getting the user to click on something so you can be more selective. You can get them to go right there and actually do JavaScript and do things that maybe you couldn't get them to do before unless they happen to come to that malvertising site.
I'm imagining the Angler developers having a marketing team with a focus group, sitting down, asking them questions of, would you click on link if I sent you an email with it? And, oh, yeah, we would. That would be a great idea. And then, oh, we put out this brand new functionality, like a regular software vendor would do, Hey, we've got brand new, you can click on links in email. We'll infect you that way. Awesome. So I don't know. It's just I went there. So
do they use social engineering as well? Do they say, hey, your Flash needs updating, please accept to update, things like that?
I don't think I've seen the exploit kits do that. I mean, they're much more, they already have their exploits that they're targeting, so they don't so much try and do the social engineering.
Okay.
Even though tech scammers are doing that constantly now. That
interesting.
Seems to be the craze.
Why wouldn't you? I mean, if you can't get them from an exploit, why don't you just try and get them to give you permissions to their system, right? It seems like they would. I mean, why don't you think they don't?
Well, but like you remember, you start spraying it out and hoping it does. I think they're so effective now because there's so many people out there. Well, not just get wise. If you think about it, if I'm already sending these out and I'm already, 50% effective with my current technique or something, I don't need to worry about enhancing that because what I'm doing works. I just have to avoid detection on networks. So I think their biggest problem they run to now is people detecting the attacks on more of the corporate network types, and they're constantly trying to avoid the detection. But the other stuff works. They seem to be very effective at that.
Do you have real numbers? Like, how effective is this? I mean, do you have stats?
Well, for the when we talk about Angler exploit kit, when we worked with Limestone Networks last year, we actually had real stats from one of their health monitoring servers, and they were targeting like 90,000 people a day.
Goodness.
Out of that, they would try and download their exploit to 9,000 of those systems, and about 60% of the time it was ransomware.
Wow.
So yeah, they were pretty effective at it.
Yeah.
So you're saying they got a 10% success rate on those
Well,
90,000?
No, that was the ones that there was 10% of them that were vulnerable to what they were targeting. Those they didn't even try to exploit. The 90,000 were ones that like got the malicious ad and then got into the redirection chain. But then when they hit the landing page, they were never given the exploit because they weren't vulnerable to something they were trying to take advantage of. So you wouldn't even notice it. It would just go unnoticed.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah, and you really only need one. You know, like the old adage, blue teamers have to be right every time. Red teamers only have to get it right once. Same thing with ransomware and with exploit kits. You only have to be right one time, and then if the blue teamers aren't doing everything inside the network to help out, they're vulnerable. So,
well, also if you think about it, because they're not targeting companies specifically, there's lots of home users. They have very little protecting their network.
That's
and
true.
They're going and browsing the sites as well, and that's the thing. They have such a large pool to target from that they don't even have to worry lots of times about bypassing a lot of detection in that case.
Well, I've got my Symantec on here. That's helpful, right?
It's just antivirus, though, right? That's only one piece.
Well, oh, really? Oh, huh. Okay. Well, I'm screwed. Right. Anyway, so well, Earl, this was excellent discussion. By the way, excellent. Is there anything you'd like to say to the bad guys out there? I know you're hunting them. You're the Terminator. You're the bulldog after a rabbit. I mean, what do you want to tell these guys?
Oh, I don't know if I want to tell them anything.
You want to poke the tiger? Yeah.
Yeah, they make my job hard enough as it is.
That is true. That is true. You got any closing thoughts? Anything you'd like to tell anybody? Maybe about a speaking engagement or something, place you're going to be in the near future to talk.
I wish I would, but I've been through all mine. I'm actually on a home tour for a while now, so I don't have any definite speaking engagements coming up soon. So I wish I had one, but.
Well, Mr. Betcher did speak last night, which would be June 1st. We're recording this on the 2nd, but he did speak at ISSA Rainier last night over a teleconference. So, maybe that's something in your future. I can get you in contact with them if you'd like to speak remotely.
Oh, that's possible. I mean, I'm always willing to talk about my knowledge so that more people can understand what things are going on. So, yeah.
Right on. Okay, so if anybody would like to continue the conversation with you, on social media or whatever, how would they be able to get a hold of you?
Twitter is probably the easiest.
Twitter? Okay.
Yeah.
And what's your Twitter handle?
It's KUNGCHIU.
KUNGCHIU.
Yes.
Okay.
What's the story behind that?
Yeah, I was going to say, any kind of meaning for that?
Yeah, it's like a name for Confucius. I got it when I was working for the Air Force or Civil Service. So.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Very cool. So, Mr. Betcher, same question to you. How would people get a hold of you if they wanted to talk to you?
Hey, I'm also on Twitter.
What?
My handle is @BetcherPwned. BOETTCHERPWNED.
Very cool. Earl, are you going to be at the DFIR conference with Mr. Betcher in a couple of months?
Oh, I don't know.
It is in a couple of months, right, Mr. Betcher?
I believe so.
Okay. All right. I'm sure you two can chat it up because you're local to Austin there, so you two can get together, go to an ISSA meeting or something. So if you want to get a hold of the Breaking Down Security podcast, our official Twitter is @BrakesSec, BRAKESEC. You can follow me at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. I spell it properly. We're on LinkedIn. Many thanks to our Patreon users. Yeah, we're still doing the DerbyCon thing. Our third clue for our free DerbyCon ticket for our Capture the Flag contest is June 15th, or on or around June 15th. There's still plenty of time to get involved with that. We've had 9 people make it to stage 3 so far for a free ticket. We're also doing a raffle that will probably happen sometime in mid-August. If you want to give, you can go back and listen to our May 1st podcast, I think 2016-017, to get information about that. Thank you to our existing patrons. We appreciate everything they do there. We're on iTunes, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Tumblr. We're on various internet radio sites like Stitcher, Player.fm, and TuneIn Radio. And, there's really, and we just started our YouTube channel back up again, so you can listen to the full podcast on there as well. So, thanks, Earl, for coming on. If you ever want to come on and talk about something other than Angler, you are more than welcome to. We like talking about malware because I find it very interesting because there's software development involved. I mean, it seems like their software development is fairly tight. They're very agile with their processes there and the features they put out. I would love to be able to talk to a malware developer to find out if they use like Waterfall or Agile or something for their processes. I can't imagine that they're everybody's just willy nilly developing stuff on the fly. So that might be interesting. If you're a malware developer, get in contact with us, bds.podcast@gmail.com. You can, we'd love to have you come on. I mean, if you live in the Seattle area or something and you just want to have coffee and we can pick your brain, I'd love to be able to talk to you about the development process of malware. So, might be something. Any last words, gentlemen?
Stay safe out there.
Yeah.
Don't click those links.
Yeah.
Don't click those links. Right on. All right, gentlemen. It was great. Have a great week. This has been Breakdown Security. Later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.